Alrighty. So, welcome to the last day of class. Thomas, you want? We should show up next week just in case people are. Yeah. So let's just plan on showing up. So for those of you at home that are watching, Thomas and I will be showing up during finals week, just for any extra help to get your stuff done. Today is the 9th, and we are going through part 2 of Make Your Websites Responsive. So, where we left off, I believe where we left off was just about here at the Let's Explain the Math at below 1024, when we were making our websites go from a desktop layout to collapsing into a mobile layout. So if your website looks something like this, where now so if I open up the inspector, and when I open up the inspector, what I'm looking for is up in the top right-hand corner of my browser screen now, you can start to see the viewport resolution of our website. And so if our visual width of our content area, the white box that we have with the rounded corners, right, as we come in and go to about here, right, we can see that what's happening is, because we have these scroll bars, and if our box is a visual width of 980, we want to allow for those scroll bars to be in our browser frame. And as we come down in width like this, then our white box should, excuse me, collapse in on itself, because we have changed from a fixed width to a max width. So if I open up my style sheet then, and if we go back to our content elements, which is basically the white box with the rounded corners, you can see that we changed this from being fixed width of 940 to a max width of 940. And again, because we are on our main elements at this point in time, using the older box model or the original box model, if we have 20 pixels of padding, that will then add that to our 940 width, giving us, again, when I say visual width, that's what I mean, of a 980, and it collapses in on itself. So the next thing that we did, or let's describe it like this, if we scroll down to our content element, through our content element, and we look at our element for text and our element for sidebar, meaning our element for text here. So if I go and again inspect, and I open this up a little bit, if I have the element of text here, right now, let me move it above the 1024 mark. So if I move it above the 1024 mark and go to content, we have our fixed or our now max width of 940. And if we go to our element, our child elements of content being article, we have a fixed width of 620. If we have our side element, that is our sidebar element, we have a fixed width of 300 pixels. Now, we could, at this point in time, above 1024, change it to a percentage, but because at above kind of the 980 mark, it looks visually fixed anyway, right? I don't know, 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. The way I do things is I just still leave my child elements at their fixed width. And then at below 1024, meaning if we have our media query, right? Again, so if we say media here and we go to our header include and open that up. Come on. Remember when we were doing our call to our style sheet here, and we said media all. We could have said media screen or media print, right? But if we said media all, then what we can do in our style sheet is that's where we can say, then for media that is just screen and has a max width of 1024 or below, so 1024 or below, then we can start saying, okay, our children elements need to collapse in given to a percentage of our parent element. So again, the math that we used, a little bit of a review of what we did last time. This is where I've drawn this little diagram that basically has our content element, our text element here, our side element there. And then what I'm saying is if this text element is a width of 620 and it is inside an element of 940, right? 620 divided by 940 is a percentage of, or percentage that is 65.95. Our sidebar element is 300 pixels wide inside of our width of 940. Again, our 940 refers to the kind of live width of our element. And that becomes a percentage of 3191. So if we start then coming in, so if I show you, or let's actually go back here, and I am then going to, instead of putting a border on these elements, because a 1 pixel border will then be on the outside of the element. So when you have borders on things that collapse in like that, it's that 1 pixel is a fixed width on a relative width element or a responsive element. So this time I'm going to say background color, and I can just say, let's see if triple D, how that looks on the projector. Triple D is a very light gray. So if I say that, and we go back here and I refresh, as we come in then, can you see that on the projector? Yeah? Okay. So as we come in then, you can see that the elements, right, start collapsing in at their percentage. Now, the one percentage that I still have not done yet is this percentage for the gutter or the margins over here. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of go back and forth on, well, should I do a percentage over here or not, right? Well, because I did it in the lecture, let's do that, okay? So if on the content element, I have padding 20 pixels, right? padding, 20 pixels. If I write it like that, that's 20 pixels all the way around, okay? So what I want to do then is keep my top and bottom pixels a 20, but I want the margins on the left and right-hand side to collapse in given a percentage of the overall width. So that's where then, if we go back to our little diagram here, that's where we have this 20 pixels of padding. So 20 pixels divided by 980, right? Because this gets taken out of the overall visual width, right? That may or may not make 100% sense to you, right? But in other words, don't think about that stuff too long, right? It's like, how big is the universe? I don't know. My brain hurts now, right? What I can tell you is I've tested it, and that's how this works. So given the fact that I've tested it and that's what I found, that's what we're going with. So 20 pixels divided by 980 equals 2.04. And I believe somebody told me one time, oh yeah, I was watching a Linda video and they said the same thing. So Linda video backs me up on that, going with it, not questioning it. So what I want to do is 2.04 left and right. So again, top, right, bottom, left. Have I already called that the trouble syntax? Top, right, bottom, left, trouble, TRBL. Oh, that's how you remember it. So now if I refresh, and as we come in below the 1024 mark, we should see, you can kind of see it, but you see how it's starting to move over a bit towards the left and right hand margins there, okay? So it should basically look like this gutter right here and this margin should pretty much be identical. It may not visually look like it, but given the math, that's how it should work out, okay? But at some point in time, let's say something like this. How visually appealing is that? It's terrible, right? What's terrible about it mainly is this column right here. So, or the sidebar. Now, when we're talking about body copy here, does anybody remember what the readability zone of characters per line typically is? What's the max characters per line you should have? 34, so 34 characters per line is probably somewhere here. So what would then, how many characters per line would this be right here? Almost 80, I think. If so, and I'm not talking spaces in there. So my rule of thumb is the readable zone is 40 to 80 characters per line. That's the one that I adhere to, right? So if we're down here, this is still readable, right? This is absolutely not readable. So what we have to do is, as we are coming down in size, we have to adjust our design. So right now, if we're here, right, 744, or let's say, let's go 768. So this is what it would look like on an iPad in portrait view. Again, not so bad, right? If we look at my personal blog, and we go to one of my articles, same thing, at 768. This seems pretty readable, right? And we have our sidebar over here, but it's not in the way because it's over on the right-hand side. So I can always, as I'm reading a line, I can get to here and then feel comfortable going back to this left-hand edge over there. So again, how many of you, well, I'll just tell you my scenario. I think I've already mentioned this in class, where what I do late at night is I have my iPad and I'm scrolling through Facebook. Everybody does it. You know, you do it too, right? And so I start reading articles on the internet, and typically in 768 portrait. So this is what it looks like. Many of the websites that I come across have this sidebar over here, and I don't know, this paragraph like that doesn't necessarily bother me with a sidebar over there. However, some have at 800 have the toggle menu already built into them and no sidebar and a paragraph that extends all the way out. And I look at that and I think to myself, yeah, that looks good too. So this, I think, is an ergonomically usable design. This, I think, is an ergonomically usable design. In other words, if we are on a tablet, an iPad of some sort, right? We don't mind reading a paragraph like this and having our sidebar of information be at the bottom. We also don't mind having a toggle menu, at least I don't mind on a tablet. And at 768 this wide, if I have a navigation scheme that's horizontal across the top, I might think to myself, that might be bugging me on a tablet, but essentially my fat fingers and your fat fingers can click on each one of these. There's not too many of them, and let's call it usable, right? So at this kind of so what I typically use as my next breakpoint from 1024 down is 800. Why I use 800 as my next breakpoint down is again, let's just go see if this one is working again. It's probably not going to. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, if we go to this one, viewport sizes. There is an Android platform, Acer, and some other tablets that in portrait are 800 pixels wide. So when I first started doing responsive design, the next breakpoint that I used after 1024 was 768 because I'm a Mac snob, right? Then I figured out, oh, you mean you have to take into account people that are not on Macs? And I never heard that before, right? So apparently that's true. And no offense to people that are, not on Macs. And, I love you guys too. So basically then what we're going to do is we are then going to set at below 800. And then we're going to take a look at our design and assess things that need to be changed about our design. So here we go. So I'm going to go down below my at media screen max width 1024. I'm going to religiously do my comments. So I'm going to say tablets below 800, not 8800, 800 pixels. Right. Yeah. X media screen and max dash width colon 800 pixels, opening brackets, closing brackets, maybe a couple of spaces in here. Okay. So again, what I've noticed is, and this is an error that happened in this class once, somebody didn't put this space here and things didn't work. I didn't think that that would make that big of a difference, but apparently it does. So make sure, I think somebody else forgot to put pixels here, right? So make sure that you have things written accordingly, okay? So if I go back here and I take a look at, adjust my viewport to 800 or 799, what's wrong with the design? Not a whole hell of a lot. Pretty much splitting hair aesthetic stuff. So one is my logo is shifted all the way over to the left-hand edge, right? My navigation breathes because of the way I set it up earlier, but this really is shoved over there. So because I'm kind of a geek, I am going to shift things to that edge there. So if I go and inspect, are you guys using the inspector in Chrome at all? Yeah? Good. So if I go and I inspect this header, right, I see that I have margin 20 on the top, auto right, 10 auto. So if I wanted to shift this over 20 pixels, what would I do? So I'm going to go and say in my style sheets, header. How would I shift it over from the left, 20 pixels? I would say padding, because we would have the element. What I've noticed is if you give left and right margins to some elements, Internet Explorer has some problems with it, right? That's why on our content element, we do padding instead of put margins left and right on the text and sidebar. That's where that comes from. So I would say padding, I could just say padding left, 20 pixels, right? Or because I can't have things asymmetrical because that really bothers me, right? I'm one of those people. If my couch is not perpendicular to the wall, it's going to drive me insane. Who's with me? Right, thank you. Okay. So I'm going to say padding 0, 20. So top, bottom 0, left and right 20. Now, if and when I do that though, am I going to have to adjust the width? Remember that we had max width of 980, right? So if we put 20, it's going to take it out of the box model, right? Well, in this case, we're saying a max width, so it's collapsing already. So we don't have to worry about the 20 pixels taking it out of the box model and then redoing our width on our element. Does that make sense to you? Okay. The next thing I want to do is these rounded corners. Kind of look stupid now, don't they? Yes or no? You do? Even when it's collapsed like that? Oh, they're killing me. I got to get rid of them. You can leave them. You can do whatever you want. right? But I am going to say on the content, what's the rule that I'm going to use? Border radius. Here's the thing, because there's no final exam in this class, I have to verbally quiz you guys like that. If you're watching at home, I can't hear your answers. But I picture to myself, there's somebody at home going, ooh, border radius, right? Because that entertains me. Border radius 0. We're to go back there, and now I think that looks better, no? Yeah, okay. So at this point in time, hey, that looks good enough for now. And I'm gonna leave the gray part in here just to show you how the box model and how everything is working, right? And again, at 800, things look fine, right? I can still read that. But as I get down to, let's say, here, 559. I know that, again, I have an iPhone 5, and in landscape, the viewport is 563 pixels wide. However, how many of us actually read on our phones like this in landscape? Nobody really, but for those people that do, right? I would say that this is starting to look kind of bad, right? And for exercise sake, let's say, what's wrong with this? Well, at this point in time, this is getting a bit too scrunched right there. This is getting a bit too scrunched. And also our margins out on the sides are starting to, that percentage is starting to get a little too small, right? Let's fix that. So again, the next breakpoint that I typically use is 600. So if we go back to viewport sizes here, if we look through the landscape column, here's one, 598, 570. Again, my iPhone 5 is 563. What's landscape in an iPhone 6? Does anybody know? Well, I'm gonna, because again, I want to now kind of accommodate mobile phones, right? I'm gonna say, and again, it's up to you how you need to adjust your design, whether you go mobile first or desktop down. It's up to you to evaluate your design and your website at every breakpoint, every resolution known to man, right? And find the happy sweet spots in your design to make those visual changes how you see fit. Again, I have my patterns based on the design patterns that I've established for a long time. So the next one down for me is phone below 600 pixels. At media, screen, and max dash width colon 600 pixels. Couple of spaces. So if we go back to our design again, and we look at it here at under 600, so let's go to, I don't know, 595, that looks good. This is where I think the sidebar is getting way too scrunched, right? And the design pattern that we typically, or I typically do, I'll say, if I have a sidebar over on the right-hand side like that. So that sidebar over on the right-hand side, that that design pattern, in my observation, came about because of the bloggers' websites, where instead of just looking for an answer on a business website, people were starting to read blogs and news sites. And if they had the sidebar on the left-hand side, they found, again, that it wasn't ergonomical for readability's sake. So I think that's when I noticed the sidebar trend shift to the right, when the 960 grid came out, and then again the 620 copy column, the 300 sidebar column, and the way we wrote it was in our markup. We had our text above our sidebar, right? Which was nice because if I had in my markup, if I had my sidebar above my text, like I used to do way back when I had my navigation on the left-hand side, this next pattern would have given me trouble, okay? So just like my markup looks right here, where my text is above my sidebar, at this resolution, my text is above my sidebar, okay? So if I wanted to do that now, what might I do? What are my text and my sidebar columns doing currently? They're doing two things. So somebody said width. Right now, they have a percentage width. What's the other thing they're doing? Floating. Float. None. We're going to basically take the float off. Who said it? Heard it over here. So now, my columns are no longer floated. However, they are still adhering to the percentages. So as we come in, they will still adhere to the percentages of the parent element, right? So again, what we've done up here is text, sidebar, width, percentage, 65, width, percentage, 31. If I want them now to go all the way out to the edges, what am I going to do? That is absolutely correct. Width, 100%. Okay? So that when we go back, now if we refresh, both our copy and our sidebar are back to being block level elements that extend all the way out to the edges of the parent element, or to the edges of the container of the parent element, right? Imagine yourself in a box putting, you know, on the left and right hand side. So here though, that margin on the left hand side and the right hand side is starting to bug me again, right? And remember that what we did earlier was we went content, padding, percentage. Well, notice I put content up above text and sidebar because it is text and sidebar or child elements of content. padding. I still want the 20 pixels, top and bottom. Left and right, what do I want? Should I just go back to 20 all the way around? Let's take a look. Again, I don't know. Let's try something and evaluate our design. And then do something different and evaluate our design. Because this is HCD and I know there's a joke in there somewhere. Right? There's some iterative design joke that's probably not that funny that's in there. So if I then make it 20, how does that look to you guys? Good enough? Should we go 10? Who says leave it at 20? Go 10? Okay, so if we go 10, again, I have no idea what my notes in the lecture size say, because we're totally winging it at this point in time. So if I say now padding 2010, okay, I'll go with you on that. However, now it's going to kill me that my navigation and my logo don't line up over there, and that this doesn't line up over there. So I'm going to have to say now, oops, shouldn't write it there. Should go back up here. Better. Padding 0, 10 pixels. Ooh, I can even just do it like this. No, I don't want to. Well, do I? I can't remember what I had on footer. Go back and inspect footer. What did I have? Inspect footer. Footer. Padding 20. Yeah, so I want to do 2010 on footer. All right, that looks good. What about, though, if I, at this point in time, say text sidebar background color, or let me actually just go, sorry, not do it there, but go take the background color off text and sidebar. Just comment it out, not delete it. How do I know that this headline here doesn't belong to this, that it's actually navigation? We might need some kind of a separator, right? Text. No. Sidebar. I'm going to say padding, top and bottom, 20 pixels, left and right, 0, and border, top, 1 pixel, solid. I'm going to just say purple for the time being. No, I should say black. Black or purple? You choose. Who says purple? Who says black? Who says they just don't care? Right. I'm in the don't care camp. Ooh. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go rogue and go triple D. So if I go triple D now, I have that rule there. I could put a little more space down after text too, but I'm just not going to care about it at this point in time. Good enough. You can massage your design however you want to at a later date. But overall, this now looks like it's a decent pattern for phone resolution, right? Now, our navigation here would still work at phone resolution, right? But the next thing we want to do is, just for exercise sake, is we want to turn that into much more of a mobile design pattern type navigation. So there's an article by Brad Frost. Brad Frost, navigation, responsive navigation patterns. And in these responsive navigation patterns, he says top nav. So if you go with the do nothing approach like we currently have it right now, right, you can see that these just kind of stack willy-nilly, if they will, and it's still usable, right? In other words, if I'm on a phone and I have 4 navigation items, I can still read them and click on them. I may or may not miss it exactly. How many of you have been on a phone and you try to hit something with your thumb and you hit the wrong thing and you're frustrated, right? All the time? Okay, we need to allow for that, okay? So there's this other navigation, you know, wrap them kind of more accordingly. Again, this goes with the, you know, pros and cons. Fat fingers, cramming links too closely can easily result in unwanted proximity clicks. You can do the footer anchor where you actually have the navigation down in the footer. You duplicate your footer navigation. I don't like that one at all. The one that we are going to go with is, so there's also the select menu. So the one that I am doing on my blog here is the select menu, where if we get down to here, we have our select menu here, which looks good like this, but if you've ever looked at a select menu navigation like this on your phone, given whatever phone you're on, it defaults to the whatever browser navigation kind of thing. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? It's kind of annoying. After I set this up a long time ago, I've just left it because I wrote a blog article on it and I've just left it, but it kind of annoys me, to be honest with you, when I go to it on my phone. The one that I like is the toggle navigation. And I like the vertical toggle navigation. I'm not much of a fan of kind of the fly out navigation from the left or from the right. I don't know why, right? I prefer this type of navigation structure where if we open this up, it opens kind of like that. Who's with me? Yes, no? Depends on the website, really. But just for exercise sake, like I said, we are going to now implement a vertical toggle navigation like this, okay? So the first thing that we want to do is, at this resolution, let's say below 600, our navigation items, again, if we inspect them, our navigation items are display inline block. We can change them back to display block now to make them display as a vertical type navigation structure, okay? So I'm going to, again, I like putting things where they are stacked in the markup. So if I say navigation, UL, LI at 600 and below, and I go back to display block. Now, I believe in my lecture that I wrote up, right? I think I had the main navigation items floated, right? So 6 to one, half a dozen to the other. No matter which way you go, if your items, your navigation items were floated, so let's actually go back to my lecture, online lecture. Yeah. So if you did your navigation where you floated the list items left, instead, you would now want to say float none, just like you did with the text in the sidebar, right? But going back to Dreamweaver here, if we say now display block, okay, and we go back here and come in and refresh, right? So what we should start to see is at above 600, they're like that. They have the borders left and right hand side. We come in and all of a sudden my borders have disappeared. Let's take a look at what's going on. I believe the borders are still there. You just can't really see them because they're way out on the edge. Yeah, border right. All the way, so it's all the way out on the edge, okay? Now, for us that have the fat fingers, right, let's do it like this. Let's demonstrate why you would want to do something a certain way. So on my navigation UL, LI, A, on my anchor tag, remember we've said display block. Take a look at what happens when I take display block off, right? Again, if I display block on the anchor tag, it wants to render the anchor tag all the way out to the parent element, okay? So if we then go back and let's do this. Just like we did on our text, excuse me, and our sidebar, I want to go navigation ULLIA, excuse me again, and put on just a background color. Again, triple D seems like it works pretty well. I'm going to put that temporarily on there so that we just see again how our anchor tag behaves in space. So because we have put the anchor tag as display block, right? What is actually happening is the anchor tag, again, goes all the way out to the edge. So do you see how when I'm rolling over these, all the way over here on the right-hand edge, it's still activating the anchor? Well, if I then say, take that off, that doesn't happen. Now it only triggers if I'm rolling over. So if I'm over here, it doesn't trigger those. It only triggers them here, right? How conducive is that to mobile navigation and our fat little fingers, right? Who's right-handed? Are you more likely, because you're right-handed, to click over in this zone over here? Think about it. Again, my joke. Always remember to put your hamburger on the right-hand side. Why? You don't want to drop your phone in the toilet, right? Now, men might get that, women might not, right? But again, if I am doing it one-handed, sorry. Have you dropped a phone in a toilet before? I have. It's not fun. Okay. But one way, shape, I know. But that's context, right? That's real context. If I'm holding a phone with one hand, right? And so for those of you at home, you can't see me holding my phone, but if I'm holding my phone like this, and I have to reach all the way over to the left to click on something, I am more likely to drop my phone, right? Not necessarily in the toilet, but out on the sidewalk and crack who's ever dropped a phone and cracked your screen? Okay, I have never done that. For those of you at home, I am knocking on my head, knock on wood, I have never done that. So hopefully tonight on my way home, it does not happen to me. Yeah?
If you're going up to the fact that most people are right-handed, wouldn't you want to put the affordance on the left-hand side? If you're right-handed, you'll probably be doing something with your right hand and holding your phone with your left. So you can only use one hand.
I don't know. Let's take a survey, right? We're HCDE kids. Let's take a survey. How many of you, when you're standing and looking at Facebook, waiting for the bus or doing whatever, you were holding it in one hand and it's the right hand and you're doing that? Sorry. Those facts are just facts, right?
In the previous example, this would be the least less important of the two.
What?
With your previous example, dropping it, this would be the less important of the things that you were handling.
My phone?
Yeah.
I see your point. Yes. Again, I'm so happy that I know that Donald Trump does not lack in that area. That now I can sleep at night, right? So, sorry, everybody at home. All right. So therefore, I want to, again, have things display block like that. So if I'm clicking over in this zone, but again, look at how close these are together, right? I may want to not have them so close together like that. So what I may do is, let's take a look and see if padding does anything, because I can't remember if padding will affect it. I have a feeling that padding is not going to do much. So if I say on navigation UL, LI, we've changed it to display block, let's also say padding 10 pixel 0. Didn't do anything. Yeah, padding sometimes doesn't work like that very well. So instead, what I might do is, how would I get space between my list items? What did we do for our paragraphs? What? Close. Margin, bottom. Let's say 10 pixels. So now we have spaces between our list items, okay? I am now going to turn the gray off on the anchor tag because we've seen how it looks in space. Let's save it. Go back here. So now, if we have it like this, okay, we might think to ourselves, well, if I'm over here, how do I know where I'm clicking? I need some kind of design element that shows me where my thumb should go. I'm just put a border bottom, 1 pixel, solid, triple F, white. Now, because I put a margin bottom on it, now it's going to bug me that things are not spaced correctly. It's going to kill me. Let me see if I can't remember. Let's see if I did a border top, if that looks better. Border top. Nope. So if I have that margin bottom, let's go back to border bottom. Oops. Save. What did I do in the lecture? Let's go look and see what I did there. I did a border top. I did padding. Oh, it's because of the float. That's why. Margin 0. I'm going to kind of just play around and reset some stuff real quick. Just futz around because I have something different. So I'm going to say, I'm going to take this off, apply that. I'm going to go margin 0, border bottom. I may not need that margin bottom if I have the rules on it, right? There we go. Because I can clearly see, that's what I did, because I can clearly see where I am clicking, right? Well, what if I want a rule on top of the About menu there? What? Correct. Somebody's learning something. Navigation, spelled it correctly. U-L-L-I. First. Child. Border. Top. 1 pixel, solid. 1, 2, 3, F. Yay. Those lines all the way across are going to kill me. Again, here I'm geeking out. So here's what I'm going to do. Navigation, UL. On the UL tag, I am going to say padding, 0, 20 pixels. So top and bottom, left and right, 20 pixels. I'm going to take a look and see what that looks like. It's looking better, but that's extending all the way out to the edge. Let's take a look. UL navigation items, padding, width. Aha! Oh, I missed that. Look at that. I missed putting a max width on my navigation element. Damn it. Look at that. Oh. There it is. I put a width on my UL tag there. That should not be there. I was probably demoing something, wasn't I? Give me a second. Let me just see what's going on here. Great. And then we can see that we have that border right on those, right? So yeah, if you had a width 980 on your UL tag there, let's go take a look and see what it looks like at above 1024. Or yeah, above 1024, it shouldn't do anything, right? Why did I put that width on the UL tag? Does anybody remember? No? I must have been doing something important. No? You're right, probably not anything important. Well, regardless, if you have that on your UL tag, take it off. That's why we weren't seeing the border right over here. So on our navigation UL LI, I'm going to say border right none. It was there before. You may not have done it. I was putting a rule between these. Yeah. Again, here's the thing. Again, I'm just going totally improv. My script gets boring to me after a while. Well, not boring, but you know, looking at my paper, I'm like, what did I do? I didn't do it exactly that. I get bored, right? So this is where, you know, every show is a little bit different. So if we go back and we're below here, so that looks like, you know, again, if we're at above 600, hey, it looks great. If we're below 600, hey, it looks more like a mobile navigation. But do we want it to always be visible like that? Yes or no? No. So let's do something about that. Let me go check my notes to make sure I'm doing the right div. Again, I'm trying to toggle display block flow route navigation. Oh. Where did I do it? Where did I do it? Yeah, it's the navigation div. Okay. Navigation. How do I hide it? Display hide. Those of you at home, they don't want to answer my questions anymore. Grown tired of the quiz. Display none. So therefore at 600, when we get down to 600, our navigation disappears. Okay, so this is where we want to have some kind of a menu system like this. Now, in the original version of this 3 years ago, I had this big clunky hamburger, right? That was an actual image. I don't remember when I discovered that that hamburger is actually a glyph. It can be a text element. Okay. So what I did this time around was I'm going to say how many. Let's do a survey. How many of you know that this hamburger by itself means toggle menu? How many of you prefer the word menu next to it? I've started liking, and I should change this actually, I've started liking the word menu and the hamburger thing to the right of it, right? So what we need to do here at this point in time, let's say it like this. We now need to put in a toggle element, right? So we need to, some way, shape, or form, whether it is, so here's the original one, the image one. We need to put in some kind of a div, call it ID equals toggle, because we're going to use JavaScript to control this here in a little bit, or jQuery to control it in a little bit. And this is where this glyph right here, ampersand, pound 8801, right? So I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, and I am going to do this in my markup, in my header. I am going to, let's see, what tag should we use? Should we use the H1? Yeah. Let's just do a div tag. That's what I have. So if I say div ID equals toggle, I put that glyph. Oh, didn't copy that to my clipboard. You. So I'm basically going to say, and I'm also going to put an anchor tag in there. So it looks, no, you know what? I'm going to show you something different. I'm not going to put the anchor tag in there. So basically I'm going to say div ID toggle, and I'm going to put it inside my, let's see where I put it last time. I think I put it, no, I did that, right? This was just from my business site. So instead of this image tag underneath the H1, we're just going to do a div, or we could even do, let's actually make it into a P tag so that it adheres to the paragraph tag styles that we set up earlier, right? Paragraph ID toggle. So if we go back here, you can kind of see it right there, okay? But it looks kind of funny. So what we need to do is go back to our styles CSS, and here's the thing. We have it here, but we don't want it to appear there until below 600, okay? So you can do this all sorts of different ways, but because it's an element that's always going to be there no matter what, it's just going to be hidden or shown. In my style sheet, I am going to go above the 1024 mark and go back to here and say, toggle. Color. Triple F. Great, now it's white. All uppercase? Sure. How do I make it all uppercase? There's two different ways. Let's go with text, transform, uppercase. Font style. Font. Variant, maybe? I typically use text transform. Font. Oh, my cheat sheet won't close. God damn it. There we go. Font. Variant. There it is. Small caps. I typically do text transform uppercase. Do we want it here? Where would be better to have it? In other words, if we come down here, where's a better place to have it? On the right-hand side. How am I going to put it on the right-hand side? Float right. They're answering my questions again. What's happening? Uh-huh. Almost. Huh? If I have that floated right, what do I need to float left? Logo. Or you know what? Let's see if I can do it a different way. Because we haven't discussed absolute positioning yet, have we? Totally improving right now. It's only 7:20, so we have time. How about that? So what I just did is absolute positioning. Ooh, this is where I can actually integrate absolute positioning into here. What is absolute positioning, you might ask? Well, we can basically take this element and affix it wherever we want to on the page, given a set of XY coordinates, right? So if I said, position absolute, and I did not give it any top or right coordinates, it is going to position itself over to the left. Now it's going to be underneath here because, let's say it like this. Let's go to one of my examples that you're totally not sick of yet. Kidding, I'm totally sick of it. So let's talk about drop-down menus for a second. So if I have a need for a drop-down menu like this that goes over top of that slider element, how do I do that? Well, for one, I say position absolute. For two, I give it a Z index. Okay, so if I inspect that element, main container, submenu, okay? So this submenu, right? You don't see it right now because UL class of submenu is display none. But if I turn them all on, okay, they all sit there according to where they are in the within the navigation, and they sit over top of the slider. They sit over top of the slider because you see right here where it says Z-index 20, that is like the stories of a building. Imagine you were in a helicopter staring down at a building, right? That's not a great analogy, but you would see, right, one over top of the other. So if I got rid of that Z-index 20, look at what's happening. They sit behind those other elements, okay? So if I position this absolute and give it just a default absolute, I don't give it a top or a left or an XY coordinate, right? It is going to use this list item as its XY coordinate because that list item, where is it? It's in the list item, display inline block, okay? So if I have it displayed inline block or its parent element displayed relative, it will sit within that parent element. It's a little bit confusing, I know, right? Let me refresh this. Same thing that is happening on this text right there and this button over here. This button sits over top of that image because if I inspect it, that button is positioned absolute, a fixed bottom, 20 from the bottom, 20 from the right, z-index of 3. So if I take that z-index off, well, it's still going to show. The parent element, this list item, is position relative. If I take that position relative off that list item, I was expecting them to go all the way up to the XY coordinate. I'll have to dig deeper. That's what happens when you improv. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. Let's just do it like this. Let's go back here and say, right now, we have said this position absolute, and by default, it is going top left, right? But it doesn't have a z-index, so it's not sitting over top of anything. If we give it then a z-index of, I don't know, let's say 10. It is now going to sit over top. Come on, don't do this to me. What's going on? Position absolute toggle. Did I save it and send it up there? Div ID, ID toggle. Header. Let's take this out of that element. Put it here. Then if I say z-index 10, it's over top of it. If I don't say z-index 10, still sitting over top. Huh? The logo is over top, no? Well, my game has totally been messed up. Let's just do it like this. We can do it position absolute. Let's give it a z-index of 10. Let's keep it within our header ID. And instead of positioning it over to the left, let's position it top 10 pixels, right 10 pixels. And that should sit where we want it to. So when we come down to 600 here, that looks like it's going to work, right? Okay. At above 600, though, we want to say display none. And this is what happens when you guys go off script, right? Some things don't work exactly the way you want it to. And you have to troubleshoot it. So at basically above 1024, right, or above 600, we don't want to have that little menu thing visible, okay? It's still there in our markup, but what we want to have it do is when we come down to the 600 mark, just like we said our navigation display none, we want to say toggle display block. So now at 600, it's always going to be there. We go above 600, it's going to disappear. Now, when we hover over it like this, do we want the little text kind of thing when we hover over it? You see how when I hover over text, it shows me the little kind of T-bar text thing? So when we hover over this, do we want that, or we typically want the little finger, right? Pointer. So the other way we could have gone was we could have put an anchor tag around it. Let's go back to my notes, right? We could have put an anchor tag around it to get the little pointer thing, right? But because it's not a link that's going to go anywhere, I should probably fix that on my business site. But that's the way I did it a long time ago, right? Yeah.
Why do we care? In context of having a cell phone, there's no number of them.
Because we're geeks and we'll do this like we're doing, right? We're going to test it and we're going to do this. You know you are, right? You're going to be testing this in your browser at some point in time. Or what if somebody does this in their browser? Again, you want to give them a good user experience at however they're experiencing it, right? I've just run really kind of annoyed of the whole user experience lingo, is what I'm saying, right? UX designer. So if we say cursor pointer then, and we save that, we should get the little finger. And it looks like we should click it, but nothing happens, right? So it doesn't have a link on it. So what do we want to do? No. Instead of sending it to a page, because an anchor tag will send it to a page. So if we put a link in and we then had this, so let's, if we have, where is it? Ahref, and we have the pound sign, the kind of dummy link. Again, I should probably fix this on my business site. Note to self to do something, right? So if I click on that and we go to the URL, no, we don't see the pound sign. Well, 6 to 1, half a dozen the other, right? We can still, in other words, instead of the click event being triggered by the anchor tag, how are we going to trigger the click event? With JavaScript is the answer I'm looking for. Right. Okay. So this is where what we want to do is we need to implement our toggle navigation. So just like we, in our header, had this script for Flex Slider, right? Let's go and add our script for our toggle. Now, there's probably, what I typically do is I would embed this in an external JavaScript file, right? But for this class, we're just going to do it up here in the header. Okay, so same thing like we did. Begin toggle. End toggle. We want to open up a script tag. Again, we can say type text JavaScript. But again, the hardcore JavaScript coders are going to be like, why are you going to do that? It doesn't do anything. But I don't know. I'm still leery of just doing this. Why? I don't know. It breaks my what I've been trained to do. So I'm going to leave it like this. And again, just like our Flex Slider, we want to say $, which stands for, in this case, jQuery or document.get or document get element by ID, class name, tag, etc. Right? So we want to trigger this window dot load. We want to, just like the Flex Slider, pass an anonymous function through it. That anonymous function has its own 2 parentheses. We're going to return down like this a little bit. We're going to go back up here because each function, then, if you have a function, each function has an opening bracket and a closing bracket. If you have an anonymous function, you need to put the closing semicolon. So again, basically what we're doing is just like up here, window.load anonymous function, end anonymous function, right? In that function, we are going to say something. Here in the Flex Slider one, we're saying, go get element by class name, and we're saying dot Flex Slider, so the div with the dot class Flex Slider, trigger the Flex Slider function. Here, what we want to do is we want to go access our toggle div, right? Now we can do this next part a couple of different ways. We're going to do it a shorthand, normal way, and then I'll show you another way of doing it. Dot, click. So basically, just like our dot load event up here, we are saying when, so go get element by ID toggle, which is our p tag, ID of toggle, menu, right? When it is clicked, again, anonymous function. We love the anonymous functions. Open, closing curly brace. Spell function correctly, otherwise it won't work, right? So again, window.load, anonymous function, the statement is, go get the ID of toggle and on click, perform another function. So inside that function, we need to pass another statement. Is this making sense? It's basically embedding statement within statement within statement, right? That's where then what we want to do is we want to go grab, again, get element by ID of navigation and trigger the toggle function. Navigation dot, ooh, we could do it even sexier. Instead of, well, let's do toggle to start off with. So basically, what does toggle do? What? Did somebody say toggle? My son hates when I do this to him. That's on the video now. The hell was I talking about? It's near the end of the quarter. So basically, we're saying on window.load, enable the function of go grab the toggle ID and on the event handler or event listener of click, perform the function of go get the navigation ID and toggle it. So this is where the last time, so I uploaded something to my GitHub that I'm going to reference. That last time I referenced it, I didn't have it in GitHub. You may remember this, my old school stuff where. So if we go back to let's say this. Basically what we're doing is we're doing something like this, right? So again, JavaScript versus jQuery. Well, back in the day of JavaScript without jQuery, again, that's where, remember when I opened up my this sliding menu one? Remember that? Okay, so old school JavaScript, function. Not an anonymous function, but a handwritten function or a named function that we named, sliding menu. Pass the parameter through sliding menu of object ID. So again, this object ID here is kind of like a variable that we will pass a value through later. That's my understanding of how a parameter or an argument works in a function, okay? But this menu is a variable that we've written. This menu equals document.getElementById object ID, a value that we will pass through this function later. .style, go access then the style parameters, right? So when we are doing this, we inspect this, if we see assignment links here, display none. Well, if we refresh, it didn't actually have a display none to start with. Assignment links, right? So if we click on assignment links, remember where it said get element by ID dot style? It's saying go and write an inline style in there, and if the menu dot display, that display right there, is equal to block, then on click, make it display none. Now it's display none. Else, when you click it, this menu, display block. So if it's display none, or there is, it's hidden via style sheet, open it up. Now, back in this day of JavaScript, this was back in, 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there. This is before the days of separating interaction from markup. So unfortunately, what we had to do back then is to get that to work, if we went down to assignment links, when I clicked that text of assignment, here's the event handler, on click, equals, go access the sliding menus function, pass the parameter or argument of assignment links. So basically, if I've passed assignment links through here, I'm passing assignment links through there. Document.getElementById assignment links style, if it's block, display none, else display block. So that is how then it triggers this idea of assignment links, the UL, to open and close. Make sense? That's exactly what we're doing here then with our jQuery. They've just taken that toggle function, and instead of saying function sliding menu and doing it long way like that, writing it out, it is now within the jQuery library. So toggle, in other words, if I look up jQuery toggle, and we go to the API jQuery API and look up toggle, it basically does the same thing, right? It can also have parameters like fast, slow, etc. But if we now go back here, and if I've done this correctly, and I refresh, let me make sure that I've saved everything. Save, okay? That's the magic behind one of those toggle menus. Now, what happens though if we do this? We've closed it, right? So again, so this is as far as I'm expecting you get in terms of the assignment, okay? How many of you have gotten this far? You're done with the class. See, that was a real clap, not a slow clap, okay? So, but what about this? If I open it and I close it, look over here where it says now display none. What if I do this? Where did my main navigation go? Well, right now, It's display none. How do you get around that? Let's say it like this. Well, let's actually show you it like this. Again, don't tell them that it works the way it does, because I count on it to being broken to show you guys, right? Close. We open it. We close it. Where'd my main navigation go? Well, nobody is doing this. Only us. The likelihood of somebody doing that is slim to none, but still, for idiots like us that want to do that, we need to account for that, right? Because we're going to do that, and it's going to drive us nuts, right? Put it this way, every time I show that to one of my web design students at Seattle Central, they're like, oh my God, is that real? They haven't fixed that? And I'm like, shh, don't tell them. I count on it to be like that, right? But if we look at, let's say, my business one, open, whoops, let's inspect. Oops. Right now, navigation, style, block. If I refresh, to start out with, that navigation does not have an inline style to say block or hidden. It's basically set in my external style sheet, right? But when I click on it, it then adds an inline style display block, right? Which overwrites the external or internal style sheet, right? If I then close it, display none. But if I go out past 800, notice it changes back to display block. Well, in my lecture here, I am pointing to my navigation for my business site. So, same thing. Window.load function. When toggle is clicked, go get navigation, ooh, and perform slide toggle. Now it's all sexy. Slides. Close that, close that. And again, this return false, this is why I should take that anchor tag off, right? Because basically I want to disable the anchor tag. Anyway. When the window is resized, so window, resize, function, if window.innerWidth is less than 801 on the navigation element, hide, display none. Else, meaning if it's greater than 800, navigation, show. So that's how I get around that bug. Then, when iOS 8 came out, I don't know if anybody ever noticed this on their iPhone, maybe or maybe not, but when iOS 8 came out, if you clicked and opened that and then scrolled up, it was triggering a vertical viewport resize. because the URL would get smaller and your view part would get taller. Thereby, one of my clients saying, hey man, why does our navigation all of a sudden disappear on my iPhone when I open it and try to scroll? Because I was triggering on resize, if less than 801, hide, if greater than 801, show. So when the viewport was resized, if you were less than 801, if you were on your iPhone, it would go and hide the navigation div. Uh-oh. So that's where I came up with a solution that when the browser window loads, save window.innerWidth as a variable, load width. On resize, if load width, meaning when it load, it saved the whatever width as a variable, is not equal to, so the exclamation mark means not, right? Does anybody remember Anthrax way back when? Having the exclamation mark on his hat. Not, anyway. Not equal to window.innerWidth. In other words, trigger for width only and not vertical resize. So it works on your iPhone. But at the heart of this is the toggle function. Does that make sense? So you can go look at this and play around with it and make yours work a little bit better. But if you have gotten this far, you, my friends, are done with the class. Yay, class is over. Seriously, you should be proud of yourself. What?
Can you show us the code again? I broke it. So
Which code?
on the header.php.
This right here.
Yes. Oh, you capitalized toggle. See if that.
What was it?
I didn't have the T in toggle capitalized.
Yeah, that was it? Yeah. Yeah, because if we look up case sensitive, right? So if we look up, we open up one more tab. Slide toggle. So if you have something, the first word not capitalized and the second word capitalized and so on and so forth capitalized, what's that called? Camel case. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. That's it. Yeah. Let me stop the recording. So again, for those of you at home, if you need help finishing stuff up, Thomas and I will be here next week, same time. If you don't need help next week, go grab a beer instead.